the Ticats Audio Network. This is the CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil.
The game of the week in BC lives up to the hype, but are the Blue Bombers truly the best from the West? A last-second decision by Dominic Rhymes creates controversy. Why are the Tiger Cats suddenly scaring their opponents? And who is the best member of the Boatmen in franchise history? Have you been teased? This is the CFL This Week, the podcast that goes real deep with the league's top news, scores, and the country's top broadcasters, columnists, and analysts. I'm your host, Bubba O'Neil. On this week's podcast, a Hall of Famer and certainly one in the waiting, in my opinion, for nearly 4 decades. He has been a member of the media in Calgary, and for almost 3 decades, he's been a proud voice of the Stampeders from 770 CHQR. Mark Steven, always a pleasure to have you with us.
Looking forward to it. Great to visit.
Hey, he's covered it all. Grey Cups, World Cup, NBA, NFL playoffs, NHL, Major League Baseball, and certainly, in my opinion, I will say this, one of the top feature guys out there as well, too, from TSN, Matthew Sciannitti. Always appreciate your presence there, sir.
You humble me with that, Bubba. Appreciate you, my friend.
Right on, guys. Let's get right to work here. And, of course, folks, if we get Steve Milton from the Hamilton Spectator, he is scheduled to check in with us, but technology is keeping him at bay. So we will start the show without him. All right, boys. I'll start with you, Matthew. Following their 34-26 overtime victory over the Lions, are the Blue Bombers the favorites now to represent the West Division in the Grey Cup?
I don't know if they're the favorites, but the one thing about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Bubba, is every time they've been tested this year, you see that championship pedigree that they have. And I mentioned it a few times this season. It kind of feels like there's 2 defending Grey Cup champions only because it was that close between the Argos and the Bombers. I mean, Robbie Smith's fingertips, really. But to see all the component pieces this team has and what they're able to do down the stretch. Now, mind you, they certainly needed an interesting third down conversion decision by the Lions to go ahead and get an opportunity late on. But that's the thing when you're a championship pedigree team, the margins are that thin. And certainly we'll be talking about Dominic Rhymes and his decision not to go down when he had that opportunity late in the game. But at this point, texting Zach Caleros this week, there's a calmness about this team. And even speaking to Brady Oliveira earlier in the year, they are certainly invigorated by the discussion around the Argos, certainly in the East, but the Lions in the West, because remember, it took years for the Bombers to get to this point where they've been to 3 straight Grey Cups and they've built a culture that is about success and winning, and they don't want to let that go, and you could certainly see that against the Lions.
Mark, you've seen that team from real close range as well, too. Let's always remember, too, at least listening to a lot of the BC sports radio, they're not really lamenting on sort of the things that happened in overtime. They're talking about the fact that I think it was 21-10. They were in control through 30 minutes of football.
Well, I think Matt hit it somewhat on the head. We can sit here and go over the lineups, who's better, who's here, this guy's better, that guy's better from each team. But they do have that championship pedigree that nothing rattles them, especially starting with the quarterback. So that's what that's the takeaway I had from it. Yes, they are aging, and I wonder if there's going to be a lot of difficult decisions in the offseason in Winnipeg, but that's, November and December's issue. Right now, I think they have that pedigree. I think they have that belief that they are the best. BC is very good, but as soon as you mention the name Brady Oliveira, you highlight for me the difference between the two teams. Winnipeg has a tremendous ground game. BC doesn't have a very successful one, at least at this stage. But, it's a one-game showdown, but today it's Winnipeg as far as I'm concerned.
And I guess in a situation like this, Matthew, home field advantage in the West, I guess having to throw on your gloves and your parka and your toque at IG Field is going to be a big difference for the BC Lions as opposed to hosting.
Yeah, do you want to be outside? If you're the Bombers, do you want someone to come to IG Field where you have a raucous crowd and it's likely going to be freezing, or do you want to be the BC Lions where you're in a controlled environment in a dome? Certainly, it's not the reason why you want to have home field advantage. It's a psychological edge, though, when you see the energy that's at IG Field, and Mark knows all about this, covering the championship pedigree of the Stampeders for so long, that there is this aura that's around a team. And I can kind of feel it a little bit with the Argos now, but they don't have the sustained championship success that the Stampeders had and the Bombers now have. So when you have that, and I'm close enough to see it, these guys walk with their shoulders back. They walk into moments knowing and with a certainty about them. And that is not something that you can just manufacture. It has to come through experiences. It has to come through getting lucky breaks. It has to come through moments like the Bombers had against the Lions, where it's like, okay, you give us this little bit, we're going to take all of it. So, and to a point about Zach Collaros, as Mark was mentioning, he has a lot, even though he may not mention it publicly, there's a tremendous amount of pride that he has, being a two-time MOP, being a guy who's, remember, on his CV, he has 4 Grey Cup appearances, not including the one where he's on the bench with the Argos in 2012, and he has 2 wins. That means a lot to him. So it is going to take a lot for a team, and if it is the Lions, or if it is the Argos, or the Ticats, or the Alouettes, whomever they face if they get to the Grey Cup, they're going to have to bring not their A game, not their best game, like an all-time game, because I know for a fact that that Zach Collaros and the Bombers are pointed right to Hamilton and fixated on getting back to another Grey Cup.
Well, I'm glad you brought up, you singled out the quarterback a little. Are you concerned, Mark, anyone, both of you actually, for that matter? I don't know if it's, I'm not trying to criticize, but the numbers don't lie. The interceptions are way up this year for him. Is that a concern?
Zach Collaros you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he's aging. I mean, he's had some games where he hasn't been 100%, but no, in the big picture, I'm not worried. He'll find a way to get it done. It's not it hasn't been perfect season, and, things have changed. Things have changed on his line, for that matter, which is where I think a lot of those tough conversations in the offseason are going to happen. But no, I don't particularly worry about it. I think he's in a good enough position that he can fight his way through all that.
What, on the flip side, Matthew, I mean, BC so desperately want to be there. They have, we kind of rounded out. I know, TSN, you guys have done a great job of sort of saying that the franchise has done so well, increased attendance, certainly much more attention, media attention locally within the BC Lions, and a quarterback like Vernon Adams Jr. that so desperately wants to be at the pinnacle. What do they have to do to get there?
The BC Lions, here's the thing about Vernon Adams. He can be as good as anyone it has been at times, but there's other times he just disappears. He just, nothing goes right for him. And, as a result, that's probably why the Lions are going to finish second and have to play in a semi-final game. And their running attack worries me a little bit too. The receiving core, I think, is tremendous, and I've always liked their defense, particularly their secondary. So they are a very good team. I don't want to disparage them and say that they're not in the conversation, but if you had to rank them, they're behind Winnipeg in my estimation.
And certainly with that defense as well, too. And Matthew Betts has really, really taken his game to a higher level there. So you have to appreciate what they're doing there. So great point there, guys, on those two teams. Let's continue with that game. And we all saw it. We all have opinions. It was so exciting. We know what happened in the end. But if you were Dominic Rhymes, you personally, each one of you guys, be honest here, would you have dropped to a knee, Matthew, or would you have attempted to run for a touchdown on the final play of the fourth quarter at home?
Yeah, so let me just put it into context for everybody. And again, I always preface it by saying I'm very blessed to be this close to these guys when everything happens. If you're Dominic Rhymes and you're feeling emotionally engaged and you're in a moment where you just caught a ball and you look and you trust your abilities, because the BC Lions have called themselves the best receiving corps in the league almost every week. You see the moment, you know what's on the line, you want to go ahead and put the stake in the heart of, or at least take a chip out of the Bombers, you're looking at the end zone. Now that's what you might be feeling emotionally. In that moment, though, if you are a cool, calm, collected, like in the moment I'm going to just get down and I understand what the game is, in that moment, Dominic Rhymes is balancing his emotions to want to get a touchdown and the rationality of just going down to at least have the chance to kick a field goal. So it's very easy outside to go ahead and point at him and say, why didn't he go down? But in that moment, I've seen guys, their eyes get big, and they're like, I've got an opportunity to have a glory moment. And it doesn't make him a selfish football player. It just makes him an athlete, wanting to create an incredible moment for his team. So, yes, he should have gone down. Yes, it would have been better for, the opportunity for BC to kick a field goal. But it's not that I blame him so much, that I understand that in that moment, in a heightened situation, an athlete's going to go ahead sometimes and just think, get to the end zone, win this game.
Almost identical to what I was going to say. You've got acres of green in front of you. That's all you can see. You don't exactly know where this guy is. The crowd is going crazy. You've got a chance to slay your biggest rival and win at home. Not set up a tie, win the game at home. As I say, it's easy to sit from the comforts of our living room and say, do this, do that. I bet you I'd have done the same thing if I had anywhere near the opportunity of Dominique Rhymes to do the same thing, to win the game for my teammates. Matthew's right. Rhymes is a very decent guy. I've talked to him a few times. He wanted to win a game for his team. He tried. It didn't work. I guess it's much like sometimes, coaches go for it on third down instead of kicking the safe field goal, and sometimes you just got to go for it. No blame. I get it now. We can sit back and dissect the consequences of what he did, but if I had any opportunity like that, I'd have done the same thing.
And think about this, like Rick Campbell, when you think about him with the Ottawa Redblacks, he had guys like who have done the same thing. You think about Greg Ellingson in Burris to Ellingson on the Miracle on Bank Street, like grabbing the ball and just like eyes exploding and running for the end zone. You think about some Ernest Jackson getting the game-winning touchdown pass in the Grey Cup. Like he comes across as mild-mannered, but he doesn't mind his players taking a risk. I've seen it time and time again. So he's not going to pull Dominique Rhymes aside and shake his finger at him, but there will be, given the culture they built in BC, kind of you've learned your lesson. Next time, let's go down, let's get down, let's set up for a field goal. And Dominique Rhymes is, as to Mark's point, like he's a sensible enough and team-oriented guy that if given this situation again next time, he's going to go ahead and put his team in the best opportunity. You have to tie the game, but at least have the opportunity to get points right away.
I wonder if that was a discussion in the huddle or even at the sidelines previous to that play. Or, is that something a coach... Is that
it probably
something
was, but again, same thing. You caught the ball, and all you see is green, and all you see is the end zone. So you can't possibly think anything could go wrong, right? Until it does. So I'm sure it was discussed.
Yeah, this was probably discussed, but then you know what? I will challenge anybody. Have your heart racing and your adrenaline pumping, and grab the ball in that second, and try to make it. And sometimes we'll say people will use the criticism. Well, if a smart football player, like get out of here with that. It just happens. They're athletes. They're in the moment. And Bubba, I was right there, and I say it all the time because I was lucky to see two of those near-miss plays in Ticats history. I was there when Brandon Banks was running down the sidelines. I was at the end zone. He ran literally towards me in BC Place in when Taylor Reid had the block in the back in the 2014 Grey Cup, and then I was right there again when Jalen Ackland had the ball in his fingertip. And you could literally see the emotion in their eyes. Like it's not that they're not thinking rationally. They're thinking about, I can do this for my team. And it's that's the margin sometimes. It's emotions, it's adrenaline. And yeah, there are football players who in that moment will have enough in their mind's eye to say, okay, I'll get down here. And there's some guys who are just like, I want to go for glory. And the moment and the consequence of that moment and the outcome of that moment is a tougher thing for them to digest than anybody's criticism.
The thing with that for me, when I think about what I would have done, was the reason why I'm going in there is, the acres of green space, but the I can't remember who it was. His name was number 31, the DB for the Bombers, goes over the top and tried to deflect the ball and then tried to wrap him up. And I think once you just naturally, as a wide receiver, break a tackle, it just says to you, go. Like, you got to go, right?
Yeah, Mark saw that earlier this year in Regina when the Riders had that deep ball and it was kind of bounced and deflected all over the place. That's why we love football. There's those moments where everything can be scripted. Every play is down to the minutia, yards, depth, timing on your throw. If you're a receiver, how you use your hips. And then the ball just is in the air and it becomes like you're on the sandlot with your buddies all over again. And all you think about is 6 points, let's go. So I always find it hard in those moments to pass ultimate judgment on a player.
Yeah, it just was. He just thought he was doing the best, and like you say, breaking the tackle. I'm sure he figured there was nobody in the same area code as him. He just took off and ran, and didn't work. But I'm not going to fault him for it.
No doubt that'll be on the TSN moments of the year for when you do the Canadian Football League. Right now, the Hamilton Tiger Cats are 8-8. And as a member of the Ticats Audio Network, I got to admit, I'm as optimistic as ever, but I don't know if I saw this coming. And I think that's sort of the feeling around the Canadian Football League right now. Matthew, who's deserving of the credit there for this kind of revival of the late season revival of the Tiger Cats? And, just in talking to some other people and broadcasters around the country, they're like, I don't know if I want to play that Ticat team right now.
Orlando Steinauer. Full stop. It's who he is, and this is what I will say, and it's great to have Mark on here. I don't know, and I will ask him this week. I don't know if any other year but this year, I would have seen Bo Levi Mitchell gladly, even if he was coming off an injury, walk out there those first few series, throw the way he was throwing, which is the best that he's thrown all season, and then him say, "Okay, I'll go stand on the sidelines now." That's not Bo Levi Mitchell. Bo wants to win, and Bo believes in his abilities. Yes, he's coming off of a groin injury and a fractured leg that has a rod in it now. But this is Orlando Steinauer, and if there's a story I can tell, he has his door open in his office at Tim Hortons Field all the time. And he's always beckoning guys to come in and just talk. I'm here. This is a Hall of Fame player who's been a successful position coach and now a head coach, and certainly has a general manager, president, director, player personnel, all of the titles for someone of such a high esteem. And yet he comes in, and guys like Chris Edwards tell me that he talks to them about anything other than football. Taylor Powell said that if not for Orlando Steinauer, he wouldn't have been able to manage. And you think about where the Ticats are. Not only Orlando Steinauer, but you got to credit Taylor Powell for a kid with zero experience coming in and being able to at least make the Ticats competitive and show growth in that time. He's put that down to Orlando Steinauer. Malik, there's defenders who keep telling me constantly that they don't want to let down Coach Steinauer. You watch Simone Lawrence. He's playing he's pass rushing. He's getting back into coverage. He's a tackle machine. That's all down to motivation. And when the Ticats were 3-6, and we were all looking at the way the Argos were just blazing a trail in the East, and even the Alouettes were pretty successful at that time too. You're thinking this could be a tough year and a really disappointing year because of all the players the Ticats brought in and the expectation they had. Well, we sit here now and we feel the same as we did before the season, regardless of all the things and all the injuries that have happened. And they're bringing in Darrell Walker. They're bringing in Herji Mayala. They're bringing in Jamal Davis. They're adding depth. Maybe that's been aided because they've had Bo on the 6th game and all of the salary cap permutations. But at this point, and I can tell you this for certain, the Argos and Ryan Dinwiddie are very aware of the Hamilton Ticats. Not to dismiss the Montreal Alouettes, who ran right over the Red Blacks on Thanksgiving Monday, and that is setting up for a tantalizing East semifinal, whether it's played in Hamilton or Montreal. But if it is the Ticats that make it to the East final, Ryan Dinwiddie has told me, in his mind, he still thinks about that 2011 East final when the Argos were up. They were only up like 12-0, or
2019. Yeah.
2021.
2021. That's right.
2021, and he remembers that. And the Argos were hosting, and then he saw the Ticats come back. And the Ticats, especially in the East, are a team that you have to worry about, because just the culture that Orlando Steinauer has built and this constantly renewable resource of belief that this team has.
Mark, and I know it's ridiculous to say this because the reality is the Argos are there. But if you take the Argos out of the equation right now for the Tiger Cats regular season schedule and results, they're an 8-4 football team. I'll take 8-4, right?
Well, and I guess indirectly it's Orlando Steinhauer, but I'm going to put credit on Scott Milanovich, who was in and helped stabilize and get the offense going. I mean, they were not a very good-looking team, but now White has blossomed. They've gone through multiple quarterbacks to try and get something going. So I would say Scott Milanovich and his experience and success in the CFL as different stops has a big hand in what has revived the Ticats.
The offense has certainly been revived, and that's no disrespect to the man that was there before. Obviously, he'll be employed in the CFL. He's an innovative kind of guy. But sometimes, as we all know, things go stale in professional sports. And there's certainly something to be said about Milanovich. And the crazy thing is this most impressive victory that they've just put together. Milanovich is not there for personal reasons. The offensive line coach Mike Gibson comes in there, Matthew, and puts together an unbelievable display on the road, and the Tiger Cats roll.
Yeah, Mike Gibson has a lot of experience in this league with many teams. So certainly has been around the Ticats the last couple of seasons and has a lot of respect in that locker room. So I don't doubt that was that was never necessarily going to be an issue, because you think about that quarterback room. Matthew Shields has talked about it. Taylor Powell has talked about it. But Levi Mitchell's talked about it. They all say this is the best quarterback room that they have all been in. And when you consider the quarterbacks rooms that Levi Mitchell is in, I don't know if that's a dig at the Stampeders, but it's certainly Milanovich not being around for personal reasons is something that certainly would have been a detriment in a lot of situations, but not when you have the experience that the Ticats have. And you look ahead now, the hosting the East semifinal is a real possibility, and that is going to be a tremendous motivating factor for them, because if they do host the East semifinal, the Ticats are going to apparently put up all of the temporary stands that would be ready for the Grey Cup anyway. There's going to be an energy in there, and you think about it, and this is always a factor. And again, I'm not dismissing the Montreal Alouettes, because that is a good team over there, and not only do they have Austin Mack, but they brought in Sean Lemon, and Sean Lemon's really done a tremendous amount, got his 100th sack yesterday against the Ottawa Redblacks, 100th career sack. So they are still a factor. But when you think about psychologically all the things the Ticats have to be motivated, you get that East semifinal and the energy that'll be inside. I have been in Tim Hortons Field for multiple playoff games. There really isn't anywhere like it in the league. And then to know, again, with the opportunity to go back home, that they'll go to Toronto and will likely have a lot of home field advantage in there. Everything is trending towards this idea of, hey, even though it was there was adversity early in the season, that is not unlike any other season for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, apart from the 15-3 season in 2019, mind you. But this team thrives on adversity.
Crazy thing, Mark, for me is, and this has not been the way for the Tiger Cats over their last number of years, they've beaten every team in the West. Like they have played so well against West teams in West teams' buildings. And BC coming to Hamilton this week is going to be interesting to start off the week and the Canadian Football League schedule. Their way against the West has been very, very impressive. And again, because you've seen him for a decade, is it fair to say that the Tiger Cats' Grey Cup hopes ride on the right arm of Bo Levi Mitchell?
Well, they brought him in with that in mind, didn't they? And, they're paying him a lot of money to do just that. They're convinced that he's going to be able to bounce back. I'll be interested to see, he played just a little bit in the Saskatchewan game there, if that was just a test drive or what they're going to do with their quarterback picture moving forward. But, no, that's why Bo Levi Mitchell's there. They spent a lot of money, brought him in. Scott Mitchell caught up with him on a holiday to sell him on the virtues of coming to Hamilton and to work. So they're all in on Bo Levi Mitchell, at least financially and emotionally, at least earlier in the year. I don't know what they're going to do from this point forward, but, yes, I think a lot of it does ride on him, and let's see how he performs and if he's back to where they think he needs to be.
Matthew, you talk about the some of the good years the Tiger Cats had, and you brought back the 2021 year where I thought Coach O had to make that tough decision. There was no doubt, in my opinion, that he wanted to roll with Jeremiah Masoli. maybe because of the years there with that team. But in that East final, he made that real tough decision after he fumbled the football and the Argonauts ended up getting a touchdown out of it to go to Dane Evans. And that's going to be interesting to see down the stretch here as he has his quarterback room. And of course, as Mark said, and I think we all believe, Bo is got to be the guy. But will there be a time where he has to make that decision, which will be real interesting to watch for the rest of the year?
Of all the teams I've covered in football, I've been very lucky to cover it. The Ticats have always posed to me a very interesting example of it's not always about the quarterback, and this is what I mean. When they faced the Alouettes in Guelph in 2013, Ken Austin closed practice specifically because this is where he and Tommy Condell had an idea of basically platooning Jeremiah Masolian for specific plays. Henry Burris was in certain situations, but then all of a sudden, Jeremiah Masoli came out at Alumni Stadium in Guelph, and the Alouettes had no idea what was going on, and that morphed into a situation with Zach Caleros and Jeremiah Masoli when Caleros was injured, and they brought Masoli in, which was a little more awkward, and then that became Jeremiah Masoli and Dane Evans, where I legitimately think both guys, and I think the Ticats were able to capitalize on this. Both guys legitimately liked each other, but both guys were super competitors and wanted to, if I'm going in, I'm going to give my best. And then, well, if I'm going in, I'm going to give my best. And the Ticats were able to thrive off that and essentially get to 2 Grey Cups off it. But now they're in a situation where they have a history of knowing how to platoon quarterbacks in, rotate quarterbacks in. And I asked Orlando Steinauer that question just a few weeks ago. I said, if you get all these guys healthy, could you see a situation where you could use all of them? And he kind of stopped and said, that's a very interesting question, because maybe we saw potentially what this team could do. We saw it the week before when Taylor Powell came in. Now, I think I'm not going to go ahead and make the ultimate observation here, but Taylor Powell came in, was not as effective as he would have wanted to be against the Stampeders. Then Matthew Schultz comes in, having not thrown a pass in I don't know how many weeks, and threw a bomb right away. And now you have Bo Levi Mitchell come in, throwing better than he had thrown at any other point in the season after a tremendous amount of rest and rehab. Then he comes out, Matthew Schultz comes in, and essentially runs the offense as smoothly as he did the week before against Calgary. So there is potential here to keep teams off balance. Now, you're not, unlike Henry Burris and Jeremiah Masoli, where there are different skill sets, and Jeremiah Masoli and Dane Evans are kind of the same quarterback, so it was more momentum. When one guy would not be executing, you'd bring another guy in, and momentum would start. It happened in the 21 East Final when Dane Evans came in, and it happened in the Grey Cup, both Grey Cups in 19 and 21. This is a situation where if you have Bo Levi Mitchell committed to the idea of you're going to come in and you have that confidence of being Bo and know and have that Grey Cup pedigree, where you also have Matthew Schultz, who has all the energy and commitment and desire in the world to be successful for the team, it could be, and knowing all the weapons they have, it could be a potent combination for the Ticats. So if legitimately egos are being removed from it.
Should be fun to watch. Down to a couple of more regular season games to go, and then the playoffs are underway. And Matthew, you're right. Tantalizing is a great word for the possibility of what may happen between the Alouettes and the Tiger Cats. Hey, great job by the Argonauts. And as the Ticats Audio Network, we don't say that too often, but great job by the Argonauts putting together their 150th anniversary a week ago, and it ends up with a victory as well, too, which is always fun at home. Always impressed with the fact that they put together so many former players that came together, and not just guys that we could barely remember, some guys that really were staples with the Argonaut franchise. Mark, Steven, I got to ask you this, because, again, you've been covering this league for, almost 40 years. And have that recollection. Who's the best Argonaut of all time?
Whoa, yeah. I wasn't around for all 150 of them.
I don't know if you want to ask a guy from Calgary who the best player in Toronto was. That might
Oh, no. There's, I'm enough of a CFL fan that I respect it. And I did love the Argos, and they put out that list online of the top 150 moments, and I went back and read it knowing we were going to talk about it, so I didn't miss the Stukas brothers or Joe Kroll or anything. And I got down to 4 names that stand out. One is Mike O'Shea. A dominant middle linebacker for all those years. He was just amazing. Ricky Ray, if he stayed there a couple more years, it would be a different conversation. I might have made him number one. But two that I went back and forth on. One was Dick Shadow, who was a star in the 60s and still holds team records for touchdowns and yards, and was really a dominant player at that time. But as great a career as he was, it's just hard to go past Pinball Clemens. I mean, what he did in all facets of the game, the return yards, the touchdowns, his ability to catch passes, and, as strictly as on field. Now, off the field, he might be the most consequential Argo ever. But on the field, I think he's one of the best players, too. And although it was not easy, I didn't, dismiss Dick Shadow. I went back and forth with both of them, but I'd say Pinball Clemens slightly.
Certainly some great names right there. Matthew?
Yeah.
Apart from Dick Shadow, I think I had every person in my brain that Mark just mentioned. Mike O'Shea, from North Bay, epitomizes and still is. I think Mike O'Shea would have been an all-time Argo if whatever era he played in. Like, he's the kind of guy who, just given his physicality, his intelligence, commitment to the game, you could literally slot him in any era of the CFL, and he'd be an all-time player. Ricky Ray. This is my own bias here, because I started my career literally the second after he got traded, and was there the first day he was there at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, kind of looking around, going, after having a Hall of Fame career with the Edmonton football team, and then going to the other side of the country unexpectedly. And I think what it did for him is it motivated him to achieve. Well, I don't know. Not that he's a mild-mannered. Well, he is, but he's quiet. But there was a competitiveness about him, and still that 2017 Grey Cup, when Mark remembers it.
Oh yes.
When really the Stamps had that game dead to rights, and then we talk about Winnipeg and BC giving them just a little bit of an inch. Well, the Stamps gave Ricky Ray just a little bit, and he, among other guys on the Argos in the 2017 team, led one of the most incredible comebacks, one of the most incredible games I've seen. And afterwards, to see his emotion and to see how he was like, I've done it. Like, I've done what I did in Edmonton, I've done in Toronto. And he kind of realized the effect that he's had on the history of the game. But I will say this definitively. I grew up in Toronto. The first sporting event I went to in 1990, 1991 was a Toronto Argonauts game. Mike Pinball Clemens, if not for him, I don't know if the Argos are a franchise anymore. And this is why I say that. He has, not only in the amazing way that he played, coming out of William & Mary, had a cup of coffee with the Kansas City Chiefs, but he came up here and he transcended not just the game, but his personality, his intelligence, the way he engages fans. You ask anyone in the city of Toronto, a casual person, a casual fan, to name a Toronto Argonaut, regardless of their age, they're going to say Pinball. And some of them think that he still plays for the team. And but that's his currency in this city, and that he has been. And think of he's had every role. And the only other guy who's had a significant role that many people don't talk about is their equipment guy, Danny Webb, who has been around and been such an integral part of the franchise in so many ways, in keeping connections with the players. You think about that 150th team, the three guys, there's a guy, Jason Carrillo, who's in the back room with the Argos, who does so much great work in their community and fan and player alumni engagement. But it's Danny Webb and Mike Pinball Clemens, and Pinball in his way. And I kind of want to understand why. He has always been this ambassador for a team that doesn't get maybe the respect it deserves, certainly in Toronto, but sometimes around the CFL. And to see Pinball smiling, engaging, I walked up to him after that halftime ceremony and I said, "You've done an incredible thing here." Like, not often can we see that many generations of players and family of players gone by coming up and embracing one another and having such a great time. And because, as a couple of players mentioned on the sidelines to me, this will never happen again. Like, getting all of these guys together and celebrating what they've meant to a franchise, the oldest professional football franchise in North America, means something and meant something to all of them. And the guy who always reminds people of how important that is Pinball.
It's insane to me. I mean, I for most of my life, I lived in Oakville, and he's lived in Oakville for many times. And I drive around in my convertible, and sometimes I see him.
Very humble brag. Very good, Bubba. Very good.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying this for a fact because he'll be with his family, and this has happened twice. Where he has seen me, now mind you, there's not many black people in Oakville, so I'll just say that. But he'll throw to me, Bubba, like it's amazing, and then that smile, right? And you guys can attest to this. It's as genuine as. I don't know if there's anyone more genuine. I'll leave it at that, right? Like, it's amazing. Like, his love for what he does, his love for his family, his Argonaut family. Mark, I don't know if there's anyone like this guy.
Oh,
like,
I agree.
He literally could run for mayor.
I was out at the Argos one time, and somebody just they had those old trailers at Mississauga there. Somebody just was driving through there. Yeah. And just by total coincidence, he came out as this car was going by, ironically a convertible. The car just stopped. Everybody got out. And just because Pinball was visible right there, he just coincidentally walked out and this car just stopped. It was coming. Just crazy. I'd never seen anything like that. They talked to him and found out I overheard the conversation. I was close enough that they had a connection of a friend that played soccer with Pinball's daughter. Like, how do you figure that out just driving through the Mississauga? So, but all those things that you say are right about his personality and his thing. Look at his record. The guy is a winner. Well, look at the time. That was one of the last times they had sustained success was his coaching, 04, that era, 0004. And then now as manager, they have sustained success. Because one thing about the Argos, they've won a lot of Grey Cups, but their problem is they disappear between Grey Cups. I mean, what happened between 12 and 17 when they won the 2 Grey Cups?
Yeah.
They fell off the table.
Yeah, you're right, Mark. I think it's an excellent point. Like, Pinball, and that's why I say and mention that I'm not sure if the Argos are a franchise, because he's the guy who's stayed. He's the guy who's always been there. Dan Ferroni is another one. He always comes out when there's alumni events, and he's always there, and he has such energy and love. But Pinball, and to see, again, underlining Mark's point, the absolute energy that he elicits out of people. Strangers, complete strangers. It's just, there are some people who are blessed with a gift of magnetism and who just have an orbit around them and a gravity that pulls people in. That's Pinball. And every time I see him, I tend to call him Michael because I've had a lot of great personal conversations with him, because I like to see him less as the brand and more as the person, because guys like that, who are always so forward-facing, always so giving of their time, that takes a lot, especially when you have a franchise, not literally, but metaphorically on your shoulders that you've been carrying in the capacity as a player, as a head coach, as a GM, and he's won a Grey Cup in every capacity. Like Mark's right, the success, like he's won as a couple as a player, one as a head coach, took the Argos to a bunch of division finals, and that's now won as a GM and a board member and a president. Like, it's incredible. And I think of other franchises and players who've been as successful. There just isn't. Like in the modern CFL, there just isn't anyone like Pinball Clemens.
Winner is a person, winner is an executive out of uniform too. So he really is a phenom, And I talked to him when the Stampeders were there during the Sciannitti exhibition in Toronto, and just you start listening to him. The guy is, he's involved. He was working on some scouting stuff, and then we started talking about the Canadian content of the Argos and just what he did. It was quite a fascinating conversation. Yeah, the upshot of this, he's deeply, deeply invested.
You talk to his former teammates. You talk to his teammates when he was a coach. You talk to him as an executive and any player that he touched that point. And it's all the same thing. Like, Pinner is the greatest guy. Like, it's universal. Okay, enough Argonaut love for the Ticats Audio Network here. All right, let's move on.
Good for you, Bubba. I'm sure people at the Ticats Audio Network will appreciate these last 5-7 minutes of just your Argos talk.
Well, good for the Argos. They've earned the attention.
Very good for the Argos.
No, good for Pinner. I'll leave it at that. Hey, game of the week, guys. I mean, we're setting up. We're getting so to the nitty-gritty right now before the playoffs. It's so exciting. You got BC and Hamilton, Saskatchewan and Calgary, which to me is still interesting, Montreal at Edmonton, and Ottawa at Toronto. And at some point, Ottawa's going to pull an upset. Which, Mark, is the game of the week?
Well, obviously, I'm focused on one as the Glacier Bowl continues. These two teams are inching towards the end of the season. One's going to catch the other for a playoff spot. Saskatchewan continues to hold the door wide open for the Stampeders to walk through. They haven't done it. They're now out of chances, so they'd better do it this weekend. So I get it. The two teams with better records are BC and Hamilton. That probably, if you're looking for the 10,000-foot level, is the game. But I'm looking at one and see if the Stampeders can kick their playoff chances into next week. But it could be over. And they've allowed Saskatchewan, to maintain the distance, and because they just haven't closed the gap, and they got one more chance to do it.
Well, is Calgary playing better than Saskatchewan right now, Mark?
Wow. Loaded question. One's lost 3 in a row. One's lost 5 in a row. I guess I will say Calgary because they haven't lost as many. Neither's won since Labor Day. The only difference is the Stampeders have had somehow 2 bye weeks tucked in there since Labor Day. Why? I don't know. But anyway, so they've only lost, 3 in a row. They've came back from the bye week. They lost in Edmonton bye week, lost at home to Montreal, lost in Hamilton bye week, and now they're back. So they've only lost 3 in a row. Saskatchewan's lost 5. So it's neither's covering themselves in glory right now, but they both have a chance at the playoffs. And despite their stumbles, the Stampeders have a chance, but a last chance. It's time to stop talking about what they're doing and do it.
Well, sometimes when you have teams of that same mentality of record, it makes for the best game, as you probably well know.
Let's find out. Yeah, let's go to the other side to Saskatchewan. It's open season on everybody associated with the Rough Riders, and, loss of a job is a pretty powerful incentive for both players, managers, and coaches.
Craig Dickinson's post-game presser after the game in Hamilton was as revealing as you're ever going to get. Basically a guy who was, I don't know if he was trying to figure out why his team wasn't motivated in the memory of George Reed celebrating the 13 team, but he just looks like a guy who was, and he even said it, not quoting him verbatim here, but the most disappointing loss in his time there. You talk about open season. I don't know. I don't know where mentally and emotionally a team could be after their coach basically goes out in front of the media and says, "I have no idea why we were up for this game."
No,
he was honestly flabbergasted. Like he really was.
I get it. Yeah, I could see it though. It was just so much emotion in the building with the George Reed ceremony, the 13 team. They had every reason to have the crowd behind them, and it just didn't happen. So the one thing I will say about the Stampeders right now, their quarterbacking is better. It's not great, but the combo of the two in Saskatchewan right now just isn't working. But that's only part of it.
And I think Calgary, to Mark's point, and Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. The one thing when listening to Dave Dickinson, it's like I think he's frustrated by he's seen his defense play well with all kinds of effort. My goodness, how many times we've seen Cam Judge run all over the field to make a tackle in that line, and like Awe and Dozier. Like this team cares, and yet they'll play well, and the offense won't be successful. And then Reggie Begelton will have 200 yards against the Argos and play great, and then the defense can't stop the Argos. So it's just they just seem to be a team that can't excel in all 3 phases when each of them needs to play as a unit. And right now, I don't know what to make of Saskatchewan other than I'm not sure that they should be in the playoffs. Like I'm not sure that they should be given that opportunity.
Just back to the Stampeders that you mentioned, twice this year in games. They had some tough breaks overtime, but that's where they are. Jake Maris in 2 games has thrown 4 touchdown passes. There's 0-2 in those games. So you're right. That's a pretty good offensive game. Other games, though, they just had to drag the kicker, Rennie Paredes, on the field all the time because there seems to be a glass shield at the 20-yard line. Yeah.
Yeah, he's basically been their offense, Mark. There's game. Walked up to him. I've walked up to him in Hamilton. I'm like, "How you doing?" And he goes, "Yeah, no, I'm ready to go whenever they need me." Like he literally has been their offense in some games. 4 field goals. He's kicked 5 field goals or 6 field goals.
2 games with 6. Yeah. Because I have the magnifying glass on this, so I know this stuff. He has made more field goals than all but 2 kickers have tried. So think of that. That's how often he's been on the field.
What? Yeah. That's a great stat. That's a great stat.
He's kicked 47. And there's 2 kickers. I think it's Cote in Montreal. He's obviously hurt. And I can't remember the other one, but so pretty wild.
Mark, it's gotten to the point that when he misses a field goal, I'm stunned.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the respect at least I have for him, and
totally,
that's how good he seems to be.
Oh yeah,
Matthew, I'm going to.
Just going to say, it just shows at least they are moving the ball to get it into some kind of scoring territory. They've got 25 offensive touchdowns and 47 field goals, but if they could, make those ratios a little closer, they'd be in better shape. But they aren't, and here's where we are.
Matthew, you going to be in Hamilton on Friday night?
I will be there, and I think it's the game of the week for no other reason than BC will want a response. And these teams will look at this as an ultimate playoff tune-up. They will look at each other and say, okay, we get to measure each other against a team that's as close to pushing the Bombers in the West as you can be, and the Ticats are as close to a team that is pushing everyone else in the East as you can be. And I'm expecting a good game. And I look at the Ticats, and we will be keeping an eye on that quarterback situation and how that evolves over the course of the week, but especially in the games, because I don't put it past Orlando Steinauer to try anything to see if he could go ahead and kind of understand what situations he might be able to get things out of Bo Levi Mitchell and Matthew Schultz, and let's not forget Taylor Powell as well. But the one thing I'm as intrigued as anybody is I enjoy watching Vernon Adams this year. I enjoy watching the joy that he's playing the game with, the confidence he's playing the game with. And sure, we always keep talking about, bad Vernon and good Vernon. He's been great all year. Like, it's even when you account for the 6-pick game against the Argos, like this is a guy who has, and I don't think we're talking enough about it. I remember being at a practice in Hamilton when Vernon Adams Jr. was lining up as a receiver. He was the fourth quarterback on the team, and you remember this, Bubba, and he was like, I will do anything to stay in this league. And to see how he has worked and evolved, it is an absolute story of achievement in this league to see a guy who was traded for a draft pick and moved around Saskatchewan twice and Montreal and then the disappointment of that and going over to BC and everyone's got their eyes on Nathan Rourke, and then Nathan Rourke leaves and Vernon Adams Jr. says, no, I can be the guy. And I give him full credit because he has really shown me something this year.
Well, especially the fact that he will always be part of the trivia question, and the fact that June Jones said "see ya" when Johnny Manziel came to town. And we all know what kind of zoo that was.
Yeah, think about the adversity that Vernon Adams Jr. has dealt with, and we always, I think unfairly, every time that he's at a game where he goes from throwing 4 touchdowns to throwing like 3 picks, and people will be like, "Why are you throwing those balls?" Like, he has such a level of self-belief that he knows that no matter what disappointing situation, he's always going to find a way to produce and be reliable to his teammates. And I can tell you this, watching the BC Lions, and one of the things I'm interested to see when they come is the amount of belief that they have in Vernon Adams Jr., the amount of buy-in these guys have, and they want to be successful for him. So that's when a team feels that way about their quarterback, good things happen.
One thing that I think that the Lions are going to have to certainly protect against, and he did such a great job when these two teams met up at BC Place, is James Butler. James Butler has just been unbelievable this year. First Tiger Cat running back to go over the 1,000-yard mark since DeAndre Cobb in 2010, Mark Steven. He's, incredible that, his former team going to play them again, but the fact that he has become a staple in a city that, in a town, and a team that just, I guess a lot of it had to do with Kent Austin. They wanted to go vertical, and here's a team that can run the football pretty well right now.
No, I really liked him in BC. That was a tremendous free agent signing by the Cats, and he was very good last year, and he's very good this year. So I can't say it's a big shock that he's performed at that level, but he has made a difference because he's very, very effective. I've really, really enjoyed watching him this year.
Matthew, again with you on the sidelines, there are I'm not going to say pinball, but he's kind of like a pinball, like in terms of his attitude and the big smile on his face, and just cares so much about his own teammates.
This again comes down to a culture of appreciation and buy-in and overall affection for a locker room that comes from Orlando Steinauer down. Like this year, Orlando Steinauer has had the mantra of drop the ego, but drop the E and go. And certainly you can see that in the way that Bo Levi Mitchell came out in Regina, certainly the way Simone Lawrence is playing, Lee Carney has been playing, to say nothing of the Jared Davis and Dylan Wynn situations with their injuries and regardless, they're buy-in. But James Butler, when I've spoken to him and done interviews with him on the sidelines, has the biggest smile, and he's just like, yeah, man, I can't wait to play for this team, whatever they want me to do. And remember the debate at the start of the year, one of the contentious points around Tommy Condell was, why isn't he running James Butler more? And why isn't he running James Butler more? And there's a lot of reasons. That doesn't necessarily always go down to the play caller. It could be situations on the offensive line. It could be defenses that they're seeing. It could be receivers not necessarily getting out and setting up the opportunity for a run. So there's so many things that could happen that doesn't make the run game advantageous. But every time you put the ball in James Butler's hands this season, good things happen. And he amongst all those other weapons, come playoff time, I mean, I'm excited in that East semifinal, especially when you know, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself by a few weeks, but when you certainly look at the weapons that the Owls have in their defensive line going up against James Butler, that's going to be great. But this is another opportunity for him, like he had in BC, where he was motivated to have a near career game. This is another great chance for him to build that momentum heading into the postseason.
Yeah, no question. Great back, and one of the great under-the-radar signings that happened in the CFL this year.
Matthew, you just said the key word in this appreciation for you guys for giving us all you got here on the CFL this week, your knowledge, your opinions, the great stories you guys have told. I really, really appreciate it. I know for a fact that the people that watch and listen to this podcast really, really, this is why they keep coming back and why we keep having you guys back. So thank you so much. When people want to contact you, Matthew, they want to rip you about your knowledge of the CFL, where can they find you?
Always at TSN Sciannitti, Scianitti on Instagram and X now, I guess. Yeah, X, yeah.
I still keep calling it Twitter. It's going to be a while for me to make that switch. Where can they find you there, Mark?
On the mighty X, you can find me at Mark on Football.
Right.
I post a lot of Stampeder stuff there, and also on Facebook, Mark Stevens, Sports Broadcaster. I post a lot of fairly heavy Stampeder content. And
just so people know too, I mean, it's a Calgary sports scene that you do cover as well too, right?
Yeah, a lot of stuff related to other things, but primarily Stampeders, but a lot of other stuff.
Right on, guys. Again, thank you so much, folks. Hey, leave us that 5-star review. You know where the thumbs up. You know that you're going to get us once a week talking the Canadian Football League, the football league that you love, and there's certainly getting to the big climax here. Ticats Audio Network, as we build up to the Grey Cup 110, as you know, so much content other than the CFL this week. Why don't you join us, please, because it's going to be a big, big party in mid-November. You can guarantee that for the Grey Cup, and we'll be carrying you right to the end there. Again, subscribe, 5 stars, give us that thumbs up, and if not, you know we're going to be here once a week here on the CFL this week. For our co-hosts, Mark and Matthew, I'm Bubba O'Neil saying have a great week, and we'll talk next week.